But I've come to think that maybe the hyenas are exploited. I mean, they're exploited by Scar, obviously,
For sure.
for sure. But they are kind of like, so part of that wasteland is, if correct me if I'm wrong, but is also the elephant graveyard, right?
I believe so. It's at least adjacent. Yes.
Which the hyenas seem to have like a good population living there, or just hanging out there, or at least that's part of the grounds that they kind of got there. But hyenas are, to to a good part of, I don't know like the full diet, but they're scavengers.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I remember them being. They go pick up like the bits and pieces that no one wants. They have the strongest jaw bones for their size,
cracking bones and tearing muscle.
Yeah. So they have jaws that can break into bones and get the marrow. So they can eat stuff that's not taken up. They're the processing, like the garbage men, pretty much. So they're sitting out there in the elephant graveyard, where these giant ass animals go to die.
Quite literally feasting on the scraps. From the land of plenty.
But if those scraps were just left there to rot, think of like they have no way of cleaning up their water. If that gets into the water supply, the whole savannah is screwed. And I'm sure there's animals dying out there who are just like left out there, and the lions are too good to eat them. So hyenas are probably called in to eat them. That's probably when they're allowed to go out there, is to go out there and feed off the dead carcass.
I think the truth and nature of the dirty fact is also that lions do their fair share of scavenging as well. They have this image of sort of as the proud hunter, but I think that's great PR. This movie is also great PR for the lions. Who do you think felled those elephants in the first place?
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't the hyenas.
Yeah, but that's so. I'm sympathetic to the hyenas. I mean, I think they have, in a lot of ways, they're kind of embracing like, okay, well, if you're going to call us bad, we're bad. You can kind of see that when they attack Scar's, like, oh, you said we're the enemy. We're the enemy. I mean, they probably feel that way with Mufasa and Simba and the rest of Pride Rock. And you kind of get that distinction when you talk about, like, I mean, if you look at MAGA people, you say, oh, call us Nazis? Okay, I guess we're Nazis. I mean, it's just this kind of...
Deplorables. That was the 2016 election version.
If you call us deplorables, we are deplorables. There's this kind of thing where we as people will dehumanize, another group because we think they're thinking different than us. And even if we really do not like that group, we shouldn't go to the level of dehumanizing them, because then they take that and they wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
These hyenas are doing pretty much the same thing.
I think that's a really brilliant point. I love the way you talk about the hyena as sort of this resilient, and I think in the mythology of this movie, but also in our conversations about nature, it's a resilient but sort of demonized figure. Just like everyone else, it has a seat at the table, it has a role to play, this creature. But in the mythos of this movie and in the way we talk about it, these are the bad guys. And I think that fits really well into this paradigm of the Shadowlands being this underserved underbelly of society, right? If the Pride Lands is all the best, the land of milk and honey, it's the land of plenty, right? This is the underbelly. It's the marginalized working poor. You call the hyenas tough, ready to break bones to get out what is left, what little nutrition is left. They're the working poor. Yeah. They're the ones working. They're the guys at Walmart who get sick time donated to keep going through COVID because they're essential workers, or get a food drive from their fellow workers at Christmas time. They're the victims. They're the working poor. They're the victims, the metaphorical victims of racial injustice. People who are demonized into ghettos and sent into poor schools, because we base, in a lot of places in this country, we base the quality of your school, the funding of your school, on local property taxes. That's the primary determinant of how your school is funded. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that your school is crummy and that it's hard to get a good education. Again, in many places, not everywhere. The Shadowlands, they're all the parts of our system that are incompatible with this story about America being the best, or the Pride Lands being the best. They're excluded. And the reason is self-evident, right? Because no one wants to look at that side. And so their anger festers. Yeah. They become more violent and resentful. And what is the king Mufasa's response, the great benevolent king? Mufasa says to his privileged son, don't go there. Don't think about that place. Mm-hmm. And what happens when you leave people out of your prosperity? That leads to decay and rot, the elephant carcasses. And that undermines your prosperity. Your prosperity is not safe if members of your own society are left out of it, are falling behind and falling under.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I didn't think we'd talk about the hyenas this much, but they really are working class, working poor. And you can even, when Scar comes back and moves the hyenas in, you know, I just remembered, I was like, yeah, why was that place desolate? But I think one of the lionesses say that the animals, the herds, have left. They didn't like go extinct. They didn't get overeaten.
Overhunt.
They left. It's like the wrong type of person moved into the neighborhood. And so property went down. And so everyone left.
Yeah. Yeah. An immigrant, white flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of plays into when you're talking about, you know, Mufasa saying don't look over there, don't think about it, and them being like the least of society. It's also, you know, plays into this idea a lot with America, but like rich and poor as being based on virtue, as like, you are poor because you are a bad person. You are rich because you are a good person. Or you were born rich because your family's good. Or you're born poor because your family's bad. So hyenas are born into that place because they are inherently bad. They are bad animals. And you can see the way that they're animated and the way that they're colored and the darker shadings and all this kind of stuff. They are inherently bad. Scar is the same way. He has disfigurement, so he was either born with that scar or got it at an early age, and his name is now Scar. Is that his given name, or is that just the one that stuck?
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that point that you make, because let's stop and think about it. Scar with the capital S, his proper name. But what is a scar? A literal scar is what's left from a traumatic wound. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's probably going too far to, again, call him a hero here. There's absolute violence and anger and destruction in his actions. But a scar is what is left behind from a traumatic wound. He has been marginalized by this social system that denies his inherent self-worth. He's a monster in a certain way. He's a monster of society's own making. He's twisted by his impotence and his rage. Mm-hmm. You know, and sure, you can say that that's on him. He should have been more responsible to process his anger in a healthier way. Yeah, but that's a sort of privileged thing to say in some cases, right?
Yeah.
It's the perverse order of the society that has created the conditions in which his immorality thrives. He's in some ways a desperate person who has been boxed out. Just like, I think, again, to an even greater extent, those hyenas. I think it's really remarkable, right? How all of this plays out as a metaphor for white privilege. You have JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, the heartthrob of 1994, 1995, the era in which this movie was made, voicing the young Simba, right? He's the guy who's supposed to take over the whole kingdom, the whole nation, and solve all the problems of everyone. Okay? But what happens in this beautiful young boy's life? He's supposed to be getting the best education from the bird, whose name escapes me. He's getting this high class education, only amongst his kind. He never really interacts with the other animals except as playthings, whatever, to stalk. But again, the important thing here is that they're hiding the uncomfortable truths about this place. They're hiding the uncomfortable things. They're hiding the Shadowland from him, the hyenas from him. They tell him not to even think about those things.
Yeah.
Right? So that the rage of Scar and the rage of the hyenas, when it finally confronts him, it completely takes him by surprise.